Well, Jets fans, it was quite the draft, but the New York Jets have selected Olu Fashanu in the first round of the 2024 draft. But the New York Jets had an interesting time at pick 10. While the Jets missed out on the top three receivers, with Odunze, of course, going right before to the Chicago Bears, the New York Jets instead pivoted. I thought made a brilliant trade with Minnesota to drop one spot. And I will get into the trade in just a moment. But overall, I am thrilled with this selection. If you follow my channel, I love offensive linemen. And for those of you new to the channel, thank you for joining us here for the first time. Make sure to like and bash that subscribe button so you don't miss any of the latest Jets content. But my biggest thing with this was since the beginning, Olu Fashanu has always been one of my top two tackles. And while Joe Alt was the preeminent number one tackle in this draft, I really thought that the best one was Olu Fashanu. Like when you talk long-term success in this league and potential Pro Bowlers, he has incredible upside. And the one weakness in his game I actually view as a strength for the Jets, which is he's not a great run blocker and he is a great pass blocker. Probably the best one in this entire draft. And it's funny because I often in this process kept going back to DeBrickashaw Ferguson. He reminded me so much of what DeBrick gave to this team, which was DeBrick wasn't really a punisher in the run game, but he was just solid in pass protection. That's really what they get in Olu Fashanu. Now, again, I think the biggest criticism that I'm seeing on Jets Twitter right now is that the Jets did not trade up for Odunze. But here's the problem, and the Jets, I think, ran into this a bit last year. You need a partner to trade. And when you look at how this draft fell, it fell completely wrong for the Jets because the Chargers, who we thought were going to trade out of number 5 for a team to come up, like I thought Minnesota, they took Alt. And that really was the triggering point of the draft because, yes, we pretty much knew that 3 quarterbacks were going to go 1, 2, 3. We pretty much knew that once that happened, Marvin Harrison was likely going to the Cardinals. I think most people had the front 4, 3 quarterbacks and Marvin Harrison Jr. But really, the draft started at 5. They go with Joe Alt, which then makes Tennessee take at 7 their number 2 choice, which is J.C. Latham. At number 6, you have the Giants, who you were hoping would take a J.J. McCarthy, took Malik Neighbors. And once Malik Neighbors was off the board, I just got this feeling that the Jets were not getting Odunze. And here's the thing. People are saying, well, why didn't they trade up? Why didn't they trade up? You need a partner. The Titans were not trading back and losing out on another tackle. Number 8 was the Falcons. And the Falcons surprised all with Michael Penix. That basically changed this draft for the Jets because if they don't value Michael Penix there, because it's telling them that there's a team looking to come in the top 10 for Michael Penix. In the way that they handled it, which was they are taking a quarterback, screwed the Jets. Because I truly believe if they did not view Michael Penix as a franchise quarterback, and obviously they're taking him as a top 10 pick, then they are taking a defensive player. There's so many good defensive players. Not when the first one came off the board at pick 15. But you look in the first 14 picks, all offense, Jets weren't able to trade up. And I get it. You want to trade up. But it's clear that once the 8th pick was going to be a quarterback, and once the Falcons made that decision, the Bears were in control. And I believe the Bears were going to do one of 2 things. Draft Odunze, which was the smart decision, or trade back and get a boatload of picks for a team that wanted Odunze. And, of course, they wanted it. So now the Jets were at 10. And I know there's a lot of people that like Brock Bowers. And I know Bowers went 13 to the Raiders. But I have been on this record saying I want an offensive lineman. And I actually think the Jets got the best one on the board. Now, the only argument for a different one would be Fashanu. And the only reason I think he's a little bit more value is his ability to play 4 positions. Although when asked, they said Olu can be a left tackle, but can also play right tackle as well. And here's the big thing. You need to protect Aaron Rodgers. This guy did not allow a sack the last 2 years in college football. And we're talking Big Ten football. We're talking trench warfare. We're talking the big fatties and some of the best defensive lines. He's going against the Michigans of the world, the Ohio States of the world. No sacks. That's impressive. Like, I my first mock draft, I had them getting Fashanu. And that was basically because I thought he was the best left tackle. And look, there's a lot of really great tackles in this class. And based on how you view the tackles, if you value pass blocking more than run blocking like I do, then you have him higher on your board. If you're someone that it has to be dead set 50-50, then he falls a little bit. If you're looking for someone that's also a mauler, that's not him. But he's got great feet, and he gets to learn behind two great veterans in Tyron Smith and also George Fant. So again, I'll get to your questions in a little bit, but the Jets made a great pivot in this draft. As I'm just checking the draft right now behind me, just want to make sure I'm staying up to date on all of the draft picks. But I thought Joe Douglas did something that was brilliant, which was trade back one spot. Because, like he said, there's a lot of calls for pick 10, but Minnesota made the most sense. And it was one of those deals where it's like, hey, we know you need a quarterback. We know the teams behind you are giving us offers. What's your best offer? And look, the Jets, they are going to have an interesting day too, and I will make my predictions in a little bit. But the Jets come out of this moving back one spot, get the player they wanted, and they lose basically the 6th-round pick they got for Zach Wilson, and they move up into the 3rd round, another 4th-round pick, and a 5th-round pick. Jets did not have a 5th-round pick in this draft, and now, along with pick 72 in round 3, they control 3 4th-round picks. So they're going to have a lot of interesting assets and ways they can go on day 2. But my biggest thing is Brock Bowers. I've always been someone, and I've said this time and time again, the Jets season will not fail because of the tight end room. It will not fail because of the wide receiver room. The Jets season will fail if they can't protect Aaron Rodgers and Aaron Rodgers doesn't play the majority of the games. What was the biggest problem last year? Pass protection. The Jets were horrendous at it. And you look now, what have they focused on? Getting better pass protection. And my biggest thing, too, in a perfect world, he doesn't play. And I've seen the comments already. Oh, the Jets drafted another backup in the top 15. This is a long-term solution. And it's better than McDonald because at the time, you still had Huff. You weren't sure about Huff's future, but Huff was a young player. Both your tackles are in their 30s. And I think in a perfect world now, the Jets going into 2025 hope they have their 2 starting tackles, Karan Warren at the right tackle and Olu Fashanu at the left tackle. If Olu Fashanu becomes what I think he is, which will be a steady pass protector, one of the best pass protectors in this league, one left tackle that you don't have to worry about, someone that controls some of the best edge rushers in this game, and maybe earns a couple Pro Bowls and is a 12-year player, this was a great pick. They do not make great left tackles. And I would say this, in pretty much every other year, I think Fashanu would have been the first tackle off the board. J.C. Latham, I think they look at a lot of the measurables, and I do see to find out where people judging how Saleh is in the press conference. Basically, they look like, oh, they're upset that they didn't get Odunze. And look, I think I do think that they would have definitely considered it. But again, they need to fix the offensive line. You're getting a tackle that in his college career dropped back 1,285 times, 0 sack, 1 QB hit. That to me, if you want a great stat from college, and he's not going up against, the Pac-12, like this is the Big Ten. This is where there's a lot of guys. And, it's pretty good too when Bill Belichick, who despises us, even gave the Jets credit for drafting Olu, calling him a very smart kid. And look, this is a long-term answer and also a short-term answer because if he has to come into tackle, and he's going to get in games, guys. I do not see a way where he is not playing in at least 1 or 2 games this year. But overall, I think that the Jets did an unbelievable job. And if you check out the community page, you can give us your grade. We will get into more of what the Jets can do later on. As I see, we have another pick. Okay, who did the Vikings pick? All right, I gotta check my phone. It's all right. I gotta crane my neck a little bit there, but I just trying to see what's the latest picks. And look, the Jets have 2 tackles in this top 10. And the other interesting thing in this press conference was what came out, which was what I've been saying for a while. Brock Bowers never really felt like a good fit for the Jets, and I think the Jets were smartly using it as a smokescreen to maybe try to move up and get a couple extra picks. But the Vikings have traded up to 17. Vikings to get pick 17, give up their 23rd pick, a fifth, a third, and a fourth. Did they make their pick yet? So they're on the board right now. I think they're probably going to take a tackle if I had to guess. It's not a quarterback. Who knows? They love receivers. Maybe they'll draft another receiver. But you look, Aaron Rodgers already liking the Olu Fashanu. And again, you look at the tackle situation this year compared to last year is so much different. It's so much night and day. And the other big thing too is I think this is a smart move because it gives the Jets the freedom. Like, let me ask you this: do you feel a lot better with this young, promising left tackle as the swing tackle next year, or do you want David Bakhtiari, who can never stay healthy? Who got picked? Dallas Turner. That's a good pick for them. Great edge rusher. The ability to fly. He comes off the edge, I'll tell you, like a bat of hell. Now, let us get to the questions. Could the Jets package their fourth rounds for a second round pick? I think they can. I also think they could try to do a 2 and a 4. Here's my bold prediction. The Jets are going to have 2 picks tomorrow. I have a feeling that they're going to make 2 trade-ups. I think there's going to be at least one into the second round and then another into the third round. I think there's going to be 2 players the Jets are going to value and say, look, we have 3 picks in round 4. We have the pick now in round 5. We moved up into round 6, and we also still have a 7th. If they go into it and get another high-end draft pick, if they come out with a second rounder and a third rounder, they certainly can. As keep it simple. Also, consider this: under Newsome, Eagles with Roma and Jets with Doug have never taken a receiver higher than 10. Well, they took a receiver at Garrett Wilson at 10. Turned out pretty well. Melvin isn't agree with me. Build the wall. Build the wall. But look, the funny thing is, I should have done an opinion episode of some of my prospects because I've always had. I was talking with Dom C about this when I did the pre-draft interview last week, and I said to him, "There's certain players that I really like that I hope the Jets were." And I should have mentioned Olu because Olu coming into this process was one of my favorite left tackles, and I was actually thrilled. Like, I really thought he was going to be a great left tackle. I thought he'd be right there at 10. Then you hear all the Bowers talking, even the receiver talk too. I think the Jets are going to come out with a receiver here in free agency. My prediction is they're going to sign a veteran, but also go out there and get someone. Whether it's round 2 or 3, I also wouldn't be surprised too, guys. This is such a deep offensive line class. Maybe they go double dip. Maybe they get a guard at some point tomorrow or another interior lineman. Teams had health concerns with Fashanu. I don't think there's a lot of health issues with him. And again, he's one of the younger tackles, only 21. Andrews, Jody was checking out for a wide receiver. Okay. Yep. I do agree that they're going to try to move up. Maybe in the third round. I don't think you can rule out having like a third round receiver there as well. Jody is a Wizard, have a ton of picks. I'm ecstatic with the Fashanu pick. My brain loved this pick, but my heart hated it. Yeah, that's the thing. This is one of those decisions when you really think about it, this is the smart decision. It's not the fun decision. It's not the entertaining decision. It's not the I'm excited to get my Odunze jersey, but offensive line jerseys not really as popular as the wide receiver jerseys, even though I have my fair share of offensive line jerseys. Look, this is one of those picks where in the moment, I think some people were and we do this every draft prospects, especially when we see all these mocks with a certain player. I think in our heads as Jet fans, we built that Brock Bowers was going to be a Jet. But one of the things I noticed is that there's a couple tight ends in the third round that they did a lot more work with. And when you really looked at it, when you look at players that they brought in multiple times and did throughout the pre-draft process, he wasn't someone that they really gave a lot of attention to. He was really someone that, when you really think about it, was just basically kind of on the outside. You're like, maybe. In the whole process, to me, it didn't make sense too. Like, you have Conklin, who's a good enough for tight end. You have someone that basically, and Jeremy Rucker, who I think is an ascending player. And look, overall, I think this was a great job by the Jets, and I'm incredibly happy, but I do see why some people are frustrated. Yeah, I think Troy Franklin. Here's the thing. I'm hoping, Kevin, that it is Pearsall. I love Pearsall, but for whatever reason, the Jets haven't done a lot of work seemingly on him because I'm just trying to make sure I don't miss any draft picks behind me. Uh, but overall, you know, yeah, I'm seeing a lot of negativity on Jets. Like my big thing too is I've said this for the last couple months, especially when I've been doing these pre-draft videos. What is the biggest thing that could derail the Jet season? I'll tell you, it's Aaron Rodgers' health. And what helps with his health? It's having a healthy offensive line. The Jets started 17 offensive linemen last year. We got to the point where we had to Wikipedia guys and try to look up their ancient football history to try to figure out when was the last time they played in the CFL or in college 5 years ago. Like we got to that point with this Jets offensive line. And now all of a sudden, I get it. I think a lot of this still comes from last year with the Will McDonald pick, and the Jets invested a first round pick in a guy that has a lot of potential, but didn't see the field a lot. I think Fashanu is going to see the field. And again, the best news for the Jets is he doesn't. He gets to learn behind one of the best left tackles we've ever seen. But you know what, guys? That tells you that all three of the biggest questions on this offensive line are healthy. It tells you AVT played 17 games, that Fant played 17 games, and that Tyron Smith played 17 games. But the odds of that happening, I really do not have high hopes for that. Double dip at OT. Patrick Paul to me is a third round pick. I don't know if they'll double dip at tackle, but I could see them double dipping offensive line. I think it'll look maybe for a more interior player like I love Haynes out of Connecticut. I think you guys have known that. I would love to see him go basically to the Jets. I think he's such a good interior offensive guard. Not a sexy pick, but it was the pick we needed. It's not the pick we deserve, but the pick we needed. Knoble. Yeah, he's the two-way player, though. You're basically getting two picks for one. I don't know. I maybe would try to trade up for Knoble in the second round. Oh, wow. But just checking on the latest draft news, making sure I'm not missing anything. It looks like we're in a commercial right now. But yeah, like when we're talking about Brock Bowers, I think it's a pick that, yes, when we think of fantasy football, when we think of offense, when we think of what's the sexy choice, it's Brock Bowers. But this to me is like you have to take your vitamins, you have to take your veggies. Like that's what the Olu Fashanu pick is. It's basically the Jets have to invest this offensive line and invest well. The last time they took a tackle at 11, it was Mekhi Becton. That was a bust. But they hit on Olu Fashanu and they have their left tackle of the future. All of a sudden, it becomes a little bit easier to figure out this offensive line. And if Olu Fashanu is a perennial Pro Bowler with the left tackle, we think it allows the Jets some flexibility where if they have to move on from a guy like AVT next year, which again, I don't think they will, but we have to look at it. This is a prove it year. And from what we've heard, they're not giving him the fifth year option. I would be shocked if they gave him the fifth year option. I think they're going to let it play out. If it works out, great. If not, Joe Douglas says that adding those extra picks for the Vikings give the Jets flexibility if they want to get in the second round. I think they're getting in the second round. I think they're getting into the second round and basically trying to get a playmaker. The question is what playmakers? I think a lot will depend on who's left on the board. We've obviously seen the run on offensive weapons. I think now at this point in the draft, we're going to see that transition to more of the offensive linemen. I think you're going to see a big run offensive lineman to end round one. In terms of a quarterback, I mean, the only thing I can say is if a team really loves like a Spencer Rattler, the only reason they would draft him is that they trade him to 30, 31, or 32 is, again, just to get the fifth year option. But I don't foresee that happening. The Bengals pick is in. I trying to think who's still on the board in terms of the tackles. I think they're going to go tackle here, if I'm honest. Let's see. I really think the Bengals are going to go tackle at this point. Let's see who they take. Yep, told you. Marius Mims, offensive tackle. Solid pick. I worry about the lack of reps in college. And again, like if you were looking for a track record, Fashanu's got it. If you're looking for great measurables, Fashanu's got it. You have people that rave about his pass protection. There's people that say he's got a higher ceiling than Joe Alt. I think Joe Alt's the safest pick and the best plug and play. And one of the biggest things is you want Fashanu to get a bit of a mean streak, especially in the run game, but he's a great pass protector. My biggest thing is like, even if he struggles run block at the right tackle position, if he can protect Aaron Rodgers at either tackle positions, if we miss time, I'm really happy with this pick. And this is one of those picks that is a pleasant surprise to someone like me. And if you're someone that I think was in the offensive line camp, you're happy tonight. If you're someone that put all your eggs into that we needed a top 3 receiver and a tight end, and if we don't, we had a terrible pick, I think it's a frustrating night. And I understand the reason for both, but here's my thing. You have a chance to find weapons during the season at the trade deadline. You have the opportunity to still sign weapons, like a guy like an OBJ, a Corey Davis. There's still a bunch of good veteran receivers still out there. There's not a lot of backup options. I mean, if they didn't draft a tackle, it's like, oh, do we get David Bakhtiari, who's never healthy, to be our important swing tackle next year? And I don't think that that's a good fit. I really don't. But I do think this was a great pick. If you wanted a weapon, I don't think you'll be disappointed. A couple guys I'd keep an eye on. I do think keep an eye on Franklin out of Oregon. And I just have this feeling that they're going to try to trade up for one of those speedy wide receivers. I also want to rule out tight end. Theo Johnson, they've done a lot of work with at Penn State. I mean, when you look at prospects, only 3 or 4 prospects had 4 different meetings with the Jets. He was one of them. I can almost, if I had to make a prediction, I feel like round 2 is going to be wide receiver. I think they'll get either third round by keeping 72 and trading the 4s, or maybe trading back in with the mid 4 and a 6. I think there, if I had to guess, if a great offensive line is overvalued there and fell to a surprising length, I think they'll look at it. But I almost have this feeling now that the Jets want those 4th round picks so they can get their quarterback. And I think Pratt out of Tulane is their number 1 choice. I think they are afraid he's not going to get until day 3. So I have this feeling if he's there at the back end of the 3rd round, they'll try to trade in to get him. So they come out of the first 2 days with a potential future quarterback, with a playmaker on the offensive side and an offensive lineman. And then going into day 4, they still have a couple picks to fill out the remainder of this roster. Because I don't think the Jets have a ton of holes, but you do want to keep creating the depth. As the draft continues, I think we're going to see a big run on the offensive line right here. I just have this feeling that, again, it's funny that I see a lot of Jet fans complaining and being upset. But look, this is probably the best insurance policy the Jets could have for Aaron Rodgers. And I do think the Jets have playmakers. The question is, can you consider develop like a guy like an Xavier Gibson? I do think if you can somehow elevate Alan Lazard, and I do think you have a guy in Aaron Rodgers that can do that. Can he take a C receiver and make him into a B- receiver? Can he take a B- and turn him into a B+? That's what I do think Aaron Rodgers can do with this receiving core, but it's such a deep receiver class. I would also be shocked too. Maybe they're going to round 2 to get a defensive tackle, maybe a first-round talent on their board on either side of the ball, and then go back into the 3rd round, still get a receiver like Rice. I think would be a good option in round 3. But let's get back to some of your comments right here. When someone gets hurt and we'll be real thankful. Yeah, and that's what I said. Like, this is my worst case scenario. Like, if I was to go through the worst case scenarios, and obviously the one is Aaron Rodgers again, but if I was to say what's the biggest outside of Aaron Rodgers, it'd be we get to week 6 or 7 again, and we've seen this play the last 2 seasons. The Jets are down to the 2nd and 3rd string offensive line, and it gets ugly. And AVT's got hurt around that point every year the last 2 years. And, Tyron Smith all of a sudden comes off the field, is holding his shoulder, and it's going to be a 4-week ordeal. Like, let me ask you this. Do you feel more comfortable with Olu Fashanu at the left tackle or Carter Warren? And I do think it shows that this team is still looking to build a Super Bowl winning team, because the biggest problem is protecting Aaron Rodgers, and they got the best pass protector for Aaron Rodgers. And I don't think he will be really and I love keep it simple. Jenkins, I would I would take Jenkins in a heartbeat. There's two problems. I don't think Jenkins is making it to the third round. And as much as I think the Jets would love it, I think just the way their board's going to fall, they're just going to be they're going to be shading to the offensive side just a little bit more. And I love Falcon GM fighting. Right, there's a bunch of NFL memes right now. I'm guessing there were some surprises there, but look, I mean, Aaron Rodgers was maybe going to be the vice president. Well, now he's got a secret service, and it's Olu Fashanu. Olu was an honest surprise. Then strike as a crazy upside would look solid. Gives me Brick. I think that I almost feel like that's the worst case scenario. He's the Brick. I think he can be better than Brick, but I think if he's the Brickashaw Ferguson, that's great. Great pass protector. Don't have to worry about him, and he plays all the time. He was not a top 30 visit, but I do think they did attend this pro day because don't forget they've been doing everything with Theo Johnson. I think they're killing two birds with one stone. As the Rams, who were rumored to want to come up for a certain tight end on the clock. I'm guessing interior defensive line. Ooh, Jared Verse, pass rusher. Good pick there. Oswald Quills, Brian Thomas Jr. is still on the board. I would move up for him if possible. I don't think that's going to happen, Oswald. The only way it would happen is if the Jets give up like the next year's second, this year's third, and a bunch. It's too much to go up now. Ideally, I mean, if you were to look at the trade chart, if you look at the valuation, like to get up to even into the 50s, let's say you want to get a top 60 player in this draft to get up into the 50s in the second round. Example is pick number 50 is 400 points. The Jets in round 3, their pick at 72 drops all the way down to 230 points. So that's basically about 170. No, sorry. My math's terrible now. 170 points. So if you were to do that realistically, that's the third rounder. That's at least the high fourth rounder, probably extra pick next year. You're talking at least 3 picks, but I don't think he's going to make it down to like the 30s. There definitely could be. I mean, you've seen the Jets working with a lot of third rounder receivers, and I would also look at Tank Dell. I mean, people, I get it because Nakua was a 5th round pick, but we shouldn't sell Tank Dell short last year. It's a great 3rd round pick. Hope Olu doesn't have to play, but if he can play right tackle as well, I think the Jets are going to want to stick him at left tackle permanently. But it's one of those things that I do think that it's a smart pick. And here's another interesting factor too, which I don't think many people are about. A lot of people say Olu, while great in pass protection, needs reps. He needs practice. What's one interesting thing about Tyron Smith? He hasn't practiced the last couple of years. He has his own regimen. He doesn't practice. So what does that mean? That means that every single week, Olu Fashanu, unlike other players that are backups at their position, is running every single snap with the first team. He's running every single snap with Aaron Rodgers. He's learning all those cadences. He's picking up the offense quicker, and he's learning in an environment where he's not thrown to the fire and saying, hey, can you go block this all-pro defensive end? Good luck. So I do think that that is a smart aspect about this as well. And the ability to play both sides is incredibly important. And if they have to stick him inside a left guard at one point, if there's injuries, it's a lot easier to transition from the outside to the inside. So I don't think they're going to push Olu to play like the left guard position either. I think they're really going to try to groom him as left tackle. And I mean, this would be a nice transition when you go from potentially a Hall of Fame left tackle for a season. You have a great option in the wings. Yep, hit those likes, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any latest content. Tomorrow, I will be doing another video previewing rounds 2 and 3 and what the Jets can look to do and how they can target, and of course, the potential trade-ups. Thanks so much. I agree with you. Keep it simple. I think Luke McCaffrey will end up being the Nakua. McCaffrey, I think Dylan Labe from University of New Hampshire is going to be one of those kids. I really like him. Do you think if Odunze was on the board, we'd take him instead? That is an unbelievable question. I would say yes, but it depends. So here's the thing. The problem is I don't really see a realistic scenario because here's the way the dominoes fall. let's say it's a team trades up with the Bears to get McCarthy, then okay, the Jets just straight out take Odunze. But it gets interesting where Odunze is on the board and McCarthy's on the board. Could the Jets have done the same thing and basically gone wink, wink, where listening to some offers, basically pull them in, get the 10th pick, go back to 11th and still get Odunze. But I think if it came down to the two of them, I think they would have leaned Odunze because as much as I love this pick, Odunze has the potential to be a really special player. And the other problem that came from this is, like I said earlier, if you're just joining us late in this video, for everyone that was upset the Jets didn't trade up, I don't see how they could have traded up because the key factor in this draft was how the quarterbacks went, who would trade up for McCarthy, and what the Chargers are going to do. So the first four, I think, went the way we thought. 3 quarterbacks, Marvin Harrison, tea and cake for everyone. What threw it off was Joe Alt going at 5. Because for so long, we've imagined that a team was going to jump the Giants to take J.J. McCarthy. That did not happen. What happened was they took the tackle they wanted. They got Joe Alt. Then you had the Giants, who I think many of us, including myself, thought they were going to take J.J. McCarthy. They took Neighbors. And when they took Neighbors, all of a sudden there was one receiver left. And you knew the Titans were going to take O-line. The Falcons shocked everyone by taking Michael Penix. Since they were set fed a quarterback, the Jets were not getting Odunze. Because if the Falcons had any flexibility, they would have traded out there. Because they could have gotten a defensive player later in the draft. But they basically think Michael Penix is a franchise quarterback. And they're going, we're not probably going to be picking this high ever again, especially with Kirk Cousins now. We have to invest in the quarterback position right now. Tyron is the perfect lineman for Olu to learn behind. Very similar build and style. And also the fact that he doesn't practice during the week allows Olu to get a bunch of reps in there. I wanted Bowers, but Fashanu's cool too. Thank you, Ben Jeeves. Chicago screwed us in back-to-back drafts with Wright last year and starting early run on O-line. Yeah, I still think the Patriots were the biggest screwer last year, basically jumping in front of the Jets. I think that will forever be one of the best. That's just another Belichick screw job. Harrison Glazer is in the press conference right now. Joe Douglas says that Talise Fuaga is a great option as well, but the Jets liked a lot of the top OTs. Fashanu being a left tackle and what he does in pass protection is why they chose him. Olu had very low pressure rates, playing in one of the top conferences. He's just really high-level pass protector, a big giant body, 6'6", 315. I think he's the best pass protector in this draft, and they need a pass protector. And if Smith goes down, you have arguably the best backup left tackle in the NFL right now. And the thing, too, is I will make a prediction the Jets will draft a tight end in this draft. I just don't think they were as high on Bowers. I think that they looked at guys, they're kind of telling you, they're looking at guys between rounds 2 and 4. And guess what? They added another pick in the 4th round. So I would not be shocked the Jets draft tight end tomorrow. I really wouldn't. All right, Steelers are on the clock now. They're probably going to go, I would say, Barton, the interior offensive line. I think, Austin Powers Jackson also is another possibility too. So, this should definitely be interesting to see where the Steelers pick. But overall, I thought that this was a great pick. And here's the other thing too. Certain players can turn around a draft. And the Jets also have now a bunch of picks. They have 3, 4, 4, 4, 5, 6, 6, and 7. I'm just getting the updated to make sure. The Jets could trade up for someone like a Roman Wilson. They can trade up for a great playmaker into round 2. And I feel like they got the best upside left tackle in this draft. They got a great pass protector. And as much as I know people wanted Bowers, I just really didn't think he would fit in the system. And the way they're looking at there's a bunch of tight ends on rounds 2 through 4 that they're looking at. And sorry, I got to give you the love and Jesus. Again, guys, comments, your thoughts, and of course, take our poll on Rich Sports Talk on YouTube. You can go check that out on our community page and view how we are doing there. I'm just going to check on the poll really quick to see The grade you gave the Jets for their first round pick, 82% of you A, 12% B, and 6% is showing C. No D's or F, though. So that's always a good thing. Did Minnesota overpay for pick 10? I don't think they did. They also think the Vikings have a good amount of picks as well. It's to get the quarterback they want, and it's to make sure that the Jets don't give him to another team. And it's clear that Minnesota obviously got an idea where McCarthy would be. They trade up into the 11th spot. They were within striking distance. A couple quarterbacks went earlier than we thought. A team that we thought would go quarterback didn't with the Giants, and I think those really threw that off. I do think that would be a good one. Here's the other thing I was thinking about as we went through this process tonight as well. Oh, there we go. Troy Fashanu. Great pick by the Steelers. He can play all 4 positions. After Fashanu, he was my favorite lineman to the Jets. But I do think the Jets have a lot of options. There's so many receivers. When you look at the top 75 players in this draft, 15 are receivers. You're getting that. Jets already have 72. They're getting one of those guys. And the trade down was smart. The Jets moved 1 spot, got the player they won, and got 2 additional picks that they could use tomorrow. They have ammunition. And if you were to tell me 3 months ago they were drafting Olu Fashanu, I would have been ecstatic because I think he could have been a plug and play left tackle from day one. And he's backing up and learning from one of the best tackles in football. I love the trade down and solid pick to evaluate a draft. And you look at the full draft and the undrafted free agent class. I think this is a safe way to start, and it makes sure the Jets aren't desperate later. It makes sure that they see a great value in a weapon, they can go up and get it. Or even in the 3rd round, maybe they don't have much separation. They're able to trade back a couple spots. It gives them flexibility, and more importantly, they're not reaching. If they drafted a weapon, I almost feel like they'd have to reach tomorrow for an offensive lineman and overpay for him. Now they can reach and still get a fair value in receiver. This is an incredibly deep receiver class. I think you can get a great number 2 still on day 2. I would also be shocked if the Jets also consider maybe someone on the defensive side as well. But overall, I think the Jets did an unbelievable job. Like, one pick I don't get in this draft. I mean, Jacob Cooper, the hand size is a little bit small, but the biggest thing, he's got length. He's got the length to really create that separation. I mean, you look at his length is brilliant. Like, that's like the hands are the one measurable, but you look at the length and really he's got unbelievable footwork. Better tackle, Alt or Fashanu? I think overall Alt's still going to be the better tackle. And again, I think he's going to be more of a flashier tackle because he's going to have some of those big pancake blocks in the run game. I think Fashanu is going to be like the Brickashaw Ferguson. He's quiet. I think he's underrated, but he will be a great left tackle that's solid and shows up every single week, which is exactly what you want. Just trying to make sure I'm not missing anything on Jets Twitter, trying to make sure I'm keeping up with the Jets, of course, press conferences going on there tonight. I know I get all the beat reporters are doing an unbelievable job. And again, guys, please, if you have any comments, any questions, put them into the chat. We'll love to hear what you have to say about that. One thing I'm kind of curious too is just seeing what guys fall the first round. I just have this feeling that you're going to see a lot of guys, whether it's offense or defense, fall in the round 2 that you're like, I did not expect that. And look, this is one of those draft picks where it's not maybe the sexiest, but it's the right one. And here's one thing that I laugh at too. I'm just, again, guys, social media is crazy. Here's my biggest thing I took away from this tonight is what the heck were the Giants doing? Like, again, I get they get a number 1 receiver, and I'm seeing all the Giant fans going nuts. Like, we got another playmaker, and they have a good receiving room. That's great, but who's throwing them the football? And it's kind of funny that like they had the JJ McCarthy smokescreen for weeks now. I'm curious if the Giants would try to get up for one of the top 3 quarterbacks, but are just like, yeah, we don't love the quarterbacks. I wouldn't be surprised they trade back into round 1. Like, if maybe they have like a high 2nd round grade, like a Spencer Rattler, they go back in. Don't forget the Giants have a top 40 pick in the 2nd round. They can easily get back in the 1st round. So that could be something to keep an eye on as we get back into the late 30 picks in this draft. But I would say the Giants one, the Neighbors pick was a funny one. I get the explosive playmaker that they have. with him. I understand gives him a number one, but the quarterback, like, what are they doing? If they don't draft a quarterback this year, you're basically telling everyone you're comfortable going with Daniel Jones. And I give Brian Dable a lot of credit. He can take, dog S and make it at least into dog food at the quarterback position. But I was surprised by that. Again, I give them credit. They didn't want to overreach, but it feels like to me more of a disappointment the Giants didn't get a quarterback. I mean, you look at their division, they get Jay Daniels. They get another really good young quarterback potentially. And then you look at the NFC, you got Caleb Williams in Chicago. You got guys now, JJ McCarthy in Minnesota. I mean, those are teams, when you really think about it, probably going to be competing for the wild card. Where are the Giants likely going to be competing? Probably for the wild card. Olu, not typical Douglas player as he likes maulers. I think it's an adjustment by Douglas, and I do think it was the right call. And you're right. Like, I thought Fashanu would be the guy Douglas would fall in love with the most because of the versatility, because he loves AVT's versatility. And that to me was something that I really thought I could see them going with in terms of the that position. I think the Jets should trade for Michael Mayer now since the Raiders picked Bowers. They might be going with heavy two-eye sets. Don't forget, Antonio Pierce is a defensive coach. I think he wants to get back to a little smash mouth football. I don't think they're trading Meyer. If they do, maybe middle of the season. I mean, not a bad thought though, Kevin. I like the outside the box thinking though. Could the Giants be targeting Rattler or Pratt? I would say probably Rattler with the upside, but there's a chance it could be either of them. So I'm curious to see who the Giants visited with, and I wouldn't be shocked if the Giants don't take a quarterback. Maybe they just are waiting out the Daniel Jones contract and want to draft a kid next year. But I mean, if you're a team that's drafting in the top 8, I mean, you're hoping you're not drafting there again because your job might be on the line, unfortunately. All right, Dolphins are on the clock. Let's see what our AFC East rivals have here. You know, it'd be really funny if they took another wide receiver here. I'm going to guess offensive line. Let's see what they do. Smart would be offensive line, but maybe they go guard. Where they go? Chop Robinson. I think a little bit of a stretch, but good first round pass rusher for the Dolphins. I mean, I think it's great for us because they don't address the offensive line, which they desperately need. Trade up for Brian Thomas. I mean, it could be a possibility. I think it's probably a little high, but maybe like a Roman Wilson. Maybe he's there in like the 40s or the 50s, and the Jets can trade 2 or 4, maybe even future next year too. Like maybe throw in a future 5 or 6. Boo the Dolphins. Yeah, and this was someone I know the Jets had their eye on. Chop Robinson, great pass rusher. But, I mean, the Jets got the best thing to stop his pass rusher. You know what that is? A good pass blocker. And they got that with Fashanu. So, I really like you talk about Fashanu. I just don't think you can't find a bad word on him. I think he's just a really good player. And he's kind of like the thing he does the best is the thing you need the most in this league. He's a great pass blocker. I think the lack of really run blocking hurt his stock. But a left tackle, I'm not paying you to be a mauler, especially today. I'm paying to protect the quarterback that I might be paying $35 and $40 million to. And that to me is a lot more important in terms of the value than what like a Brock Bowers would bring. Fashanu and Becton are nothing alike. Let's see. Wow. Aaron Rodgers already talking to Pat McAfee. Love what Joe Douglas did. I know they really love Olu Fashanu, and also love the fact they got a couple extra picks. Look, that's the biggest thing about this. The Jets got a great pass protector. They got a great player, and they also got great draft picks that I think are going to be valuable because I think they're going to be trading up, especially in the short order, to get some prospects that they really like. And I do think that there's a couple that they're going to keep their eyes on, but I'm promising you guys, I will be back on here tomorrow. I will be on around probably 11 o'clock tomorrow. It might depend. But what I'm going to do is wait out the draft tonight, work on the big board, and I'm going to give you predictions, potential trade up partners, potential targets tomorrow, because once the dust settles, we can get a better idea of what prospects are left, who could potentially get into striking range, how many picks the Jets are going to take tomorrow. I'm already calling it. The Jets are going to make at least 2 picks tomorrow. 3 is a bit of a stretch unless maybe they turn the 4th rounders in the later round picks into a couple extra 3s. But I'm also curious too, could they maybe be trying to trade for a veteran with one of those picks? Because that's usually the value you get for like a veteran wide receiver. I mean, we saw Keenan Allen go for a 4th. Just a little something to keep an eye on. Eagles, man, if they're smart, they go interior defensive line. Although they love O-line, some good ones. I mean, Barton from Duke can play center. You know what would be the perfect pick for them? Powers Johnson out of Oregon. Play that center position, smash mouth player, perfect replacement for Jason Kelsey. That's what I would do. I think he's the best center in this draft, and getting him at 22 would be great. You also saw that great chart earlier this week. I don't know who came up with it, but I saw it online where it basically gave the bust and hit rate. I think center was like, if you drafted the center in the first round, it's like a 90% hit rate. The problem is not enough centers get drafted in the first round. It's so interesting to see the large dichotomy of the scouting community and the NFL front office is scouted. And that's the thing. I think a lot of our information comes from like speculation. I think the hard part you have to look at, and I said this during my last mock draft, and I really believe this is true. When I do my mock drafts, I think there's a difference. You have to kind of remove yourself from you. And what I mean by that is there's a certain way I think a team should address their needs. Like, this is how, from my perspective, these are your biggest weaknesses, and this is what you need to fix. However, to do this job effectively, the biggest thing that I really look for in this whole process is I look for the tendencies of a general manager. I look for the tendencies of a front office. Like, what kind of measurables are they looking for? And I think it paints a picture of what they tend to do and the type of player that they look at. I mean, look at Fashanu. He's a Joe Douglas player. He's a guy with a lot of potential. You see a lot of upside. There's a lot of physical traits that you love about the kid. And it makes sense why he falls in love with it. He falls in love with those traits. Certain teams, like Harbaugh, you saw it tonight, they want to be a smash mouth team. You hear people complaining, well, you didn't get one of the top receivers. Well, we also got a great offensive tackle who's going to make us have one of the best offensive lines in the league. And I thought a great comparison was how Harbaugh won the Pac-12. You saw a lot of flashy offenses like USC. You have flashy offenses like Vegas, like the Broncos are trying to be, and most specifically, the Kansas City Chiefs in your own division. How do you beat that? You beat it with power. You beat it with horsepower. And that's what you saw in Michigan. Michigan recruited itself like they probably didn't have the skill position on the outside that Ohio State did. But you know what they had? The front seven and the offensive line. They had that. They had that. They had that mentality, and they were able to establish the run and really beat you physically. And I think that's the type of team Harbaugh wants. It's clear. That's what Joe Alt is. Like, Joe Alt to me was, if you were to ask Harbaugh to create an offensive lineman, that's what would be spit out. And to me, you couldn't have made a more perfect and fitting pick in that situation. But I do think, sorry guys, just to throw after talking a little bit, but I do think you're going to see a lot of receivers tomorrow that are going to come off the board. And look, there's a lot going. You're seeing a nice run on offensive linemen right now. You had 6 quarterbacks go in this round, which is going to push it down even further in terms of some of the playmakers. But I think Rice from USC is a receiver to see tomorrow. I see Franklin out of Oregon. I mean, I do think that the Jets are also going to look at tight end. I think keep Theo Johnson in mind from Penn State. I just get this feeling that he's going to be in play tomorrow. But let's see. Do you have any final questions, final thoughts on the Fashanu pick? The thoughts, concerns? Did you love what the front office did? Did you hate what the front office did? Because it does seem like the Jets fan base, like, we thought there was a split on Bowers. Man, there is a spot. You know, this is if I was to tell you they're one of the best left tackles a couple months ago, you're like, yeah, that's fantastic. That's exactly what they need. You know, I love Willie Colon. And dude, Willie Colon, I gotta give him a lot of credit losing 80 pounds, man. Congratulations. I mean, if he ever sees this, congratulations. Unbelievable job. Like I've been on a weight loss journey too, and it is really hard, but it is really rewarding when you get there. Uh Salah on learning that's going to be valuable. We've gotten to know Tyson through free agency. He's an elite human, thinks he's the first one in the building anytime. And look, the big thing I said about Smith, which is unique, is he doesn't practice during the week. How great is it going to be for Fashanu to get those first reps and get first team reps with Aaron Rodgers all week because his main left tackle isn't practicing? And the biggest thing that really with offensive linemen struggle is getting the reps in, getting the time on the field. I guarantee you he's going to get a lot. I guarantee you Fashanu in training camp is going to play the most of the reps left tackle because Smith, I think, will play enough to get into football shape, but he's keeping himself on a pitch counter. Fashanu is going to get a ton of playing time in the preseason. I think you're going to see Carter Warren get a ton of time at right tackle this season. And then the Jets will figure out from there. Let's see. Who did they take? Oh, Quinnen Mitchell. Good pick around Toledo. That kid is a great athlete. Does an unbelievable job. Great explosiveness, especially at the corner position. I mean, I was a little surprised. I thought they'd go offensive line, maybe interior, but they get a great corner. Eagles are going to be in shootouts pretty much every week. So a good pick. I still look back at this first round. I still think everyone is what I did. And one thing I did want to say is I did laugh because I hit the Raiders with the mock draft. I had them taking Bowers. And I had some people saying, why would they take a tight end? They drafted one last year. Well, looks like I hit on that one. But I mean, I just look at the upside with Fashanu. It just feels like his floor is so much safer than like a Mekhi Becton. Where Mekhi Becton, because Jacob Cooper's brought him up, and I thought it was a good example, especially because they both were the 11th pick. Mekhi Becton had issues where the weight, and even when he came in, it was one of those things too. You had that weird COVID year, couldn't do as much research as you probably could. First time drafting for a very different head coaching scheme. And you look at Fashanu, I just think the floor is so much lower. I mean, Becton, I think overall had a higher ceiling just because of that physical ability he had, especially in the run blocking. But I think that Fashanu has a much safer floor for the Jets. But I mean, the good news is some more receivers keep going down the board, and the more great playmakers. And the way I look at it, guys, the better defensive players, if they get a run on it now, I mean, that's good. I mean, you're looking right now. You got Mitchell, you got Brian Thomas, you got Troy Franklin, Ladd McConkey, Roman Wilson, Ricky Pearsall, even Jalen Polk. I mean, Xavier Legette is someone they've done a lot of homework on. I would definitely keep an eye on for that. And look, Joe Douglas, the biggest thing he has promised out his tenure as the Jets general manager was this. He was going to build a great offensive line. He hasn't. But I think he's assembled pieces like ABT, Simpson, that basically they have the potential to build still a good offensive line while also having the veterans to hold over while the young guys learn. Yeah, Jacob, I wouldn't say. And look, I feel bad for Mekhi. He, by all accounts, is an incredibly nice kid. I just think it was one of those things where, unfortunately, as someone that's also struggled with weight in their life, I can understand how hard it is for some people to lose weight. But the problem is when you have those great expectations and you don't meet them, especially health-wise. My biggest reason I was on Becton was the health. And I think Fashanu being a little bit smaller at 315, you look at the way he holds his weight, I think he's got a better long-term body to really play a long career. Becton, you were always concerned with that size about the durability. Yeah, well, we know who George wants. He wants Walker. I mean, I also, when we're all defensive tackle, potentially, but I just look at the remaining receivers in this draft. You have a lot of good ones. And again, I know people hate Alan Lazard, but let's also see Alan Lazard get the chance to play with Aaron Rodgers. So I'm trying to see who just went. Oh, I think they're just showing some of the Senior Bowl highlights there. Jaguars, I think the Jaguars are going to go with the other LSU receiver right here. I wouldn't be surprised. Again, got great value there. But would love the final questions. on Olu Fashanu. The Jets, I still think, made an unbelievable pick. If I have to grade, I'd give it an A. Look, I get that people are frustrating about this pick because some people think he's going to be a backup. He's going to get the chance to play. And here's the thing. There's certain positions that are incredibly hard to find for a franchise. And for football, I really think the three biggest things you need are a quarterback, a great left tackle, and a great defensive rusher. The Jets have a great defensive rusher. I mean, there's some secondary positions, but left tackle to me is the most important. You have the potential to have that franchise left tackle, and you have a great quarterback at the time being, and you have a short window. And here's the biggest thing. This definitely feels like a lot better situation than you're going to feel if the Jets get injured at tackle, you feel a lot more comfortable tonight than you did a couple hours ago. I agree. I just get this feeling they're going to sign a veteran and try to draft someone. Don't forget, in San Francisco, they don't love drafting running backs early. I think some of the extra capital, they're going to look either undrafted, they're going to look maybe fifth or sixth round. I just feel like running backs a little bit down the pecking order, receivers ahead of that. I think depending on the round, tight end, defensive interior line, don't rule that out. And don't forget, too, I think they want to establish some linebacker depth going forward because you have CJ Mosley's contract getting toward the end of it. And also the cornerback position, I think, especially day 3, they're going to try to draft someone developmental to play that position. All right. I'm guessing receiver for the Jaguars going once. Yep. Brian Thomas Jr. Good pick for the Jaguars. They get a good receiver, good value. But again, tomorrow, guys, I'm doing tomorrow morning a preview of rounds 2 through 3. And after the entire draft, I will be doing a wrap up on Saturday after the entire draft is over. But I'll give you my thoughts on the day 2, day 3 prospects that are available. We still have a lot of draft to go tonight, but I'm excited. And look, I think this also opens up the Jets more. They got the offensive line, they got the insurance. Now they can go and find the playthings for Aaron Rodgers. They got the insurance for him. Now they can find the weapons for him on days 2 and 3. And look, even if they come out with a receiver in day 3, you could still get a very versatile receiver, a guy that plays a key role on this team. So this is an incredibly deep receiver class. The Jets are playing the strength of it. They get the best pass protector in this draft. And again, I have to remind people, I think they are getting the best pass protector in this entire draft at pick 11. And oh, by the way, got additional picks for that 11th pick. Overall, I think Joe Douglas did a great job. I understand the Odunze fans having a lot of frustration right now, but the way I will wrap this up is if you missed this earlier, the Jets were not getting him. The second Joe Alt was drafted, you could have kissed Odunze goodbye because you knew the Giants at that point didn't have a quarterback they loved. They were staying at 6. They didn't trade out. At 7, you had the Titans who were taking a tackle, and they did. The one pick was 8. If you could get up to 8, you had a shot. But the problem was Falcons weren't trading back because they had a quarterback they wanted, Michael Penix. They weren't going to risk trading back a couple spots, letting a team jump them with the Bears. They took their quarterback, and when that happens, the Bears are saying they're going, we screwed up with Justin Fields. We didn't give him weapons. We have to make this work with Caleb. We have a great quarterback. Let's give him a true number 1. Keenan Allen could be his number 1 next year, but let's give him his future number 1 receiver right now. So once that happened, you were hoping the Bears maybe would go defense. It just didn't break for the Jets. And that's the thing about the draft. It doesn't break your way because you can plan, you can do these mock drafts, we can come up with all the scenarios, but I just didn't think that certain players would be there past 8. We thought quarterbacks would go early, and they did. I think once the Chargers threw a wrench and didn't trade back, I do think teams looked to trade up, but they didn't want to give up an exorbitant price to go up that far. I think that would be a stretch. I like Polk. I'm thinking he's going to probably go late second round. The biggest thing is you need to run. George, if there's a run on offensive linemen, there's a lot of good interior offensive linemen tomorrow. If we get a run on them in the second round, that helps. If you get a run on defense, that helps the Jets because it pushes guys down the board. There's a chance he can get to the third round. 72 might be a bit of a stretch, but it all depends really on how the next 8 picks go, because if you see a run on one position, it helps push guys down the board. But if it's a run on receivers, it's going to bump the guys up the charts. And unfortunately, a guy like a Polk who you were hoping to get in the 3rd round, you might have to go up in the mid-2nd round to get. And I like Polk. I think he's a good receiver. Thank the Lord. I know Jake is happy. I guess he wasn't about Bowers Truther. You look at, and that's the thing too. Like, the problem with Bowers is I think he's going to be a really good player, but you need someone that's going to maximize him. And if I was him, I wouldn't be happy being with the Raiders. I think Pierce is going to be a good coach, but do they have the offensive ability and the wherewithal and the creativity to utilize him correctly? I don't think they have that offensive mind on that team. If they did, I'd feel a lot better, but I don't think they're going to utilize him to his max potential. And as much as I love Aaron Rodgers, I think he'd elevate Bowers, but I don't think Nathaniel Hackett was going to develop him. I mean, Nathaniel Hackett took him to 8 weeks to realize Breece Hall, he could catch the ball out the backfield pretty good, but he forgot that little fact apparently up until week 8. But again, overall, I think the Jets nailed it. They get one of my favorite players in this entire draft. I think he's one of the top 10 players in this entire draft, and someone that could be a future left tackle for a long time. They got extra capital. They addressed the biggest weakness. And again, they ensured the one position on this team that when you really think about outside of quarterback, they can't afford to lose anyone. Would it hurt to lose someone like a Garrett Wilson or Breece Hall for an extended period of time? You bet. But the Jets could survive. The Jets, we've seen, cannot survive without a good offensive line. All of a sudden, if I was to tell you week 5, the Jets were down a tackle, you go to bed a lot better at night thinking we have Olu Fashanu, who could be a great tackle in this league for a long time. Or, hey, we have Carter Warren, who we're crossing our fingers and praying will be sufficient. That's going to do it for this episode of Rich Sports Talk. If you're new to the channel, give us a like, give us a subscribe. Bash that like, bash that subscribe button so you don't miss any of our latest content on the New York Jets, as we will be following the draft again tomorrow. I will be doing a video to catch up, react to how round 1 ended, and look at the prospects that the Jets could be interested in rounds 2 and 3. So make sure you follow and make sure you're around midday tomorrow as we get into on that. But again, the first night of the Jets draft is seemingly over. They get their future left tackle in Olu Fashanu, and I am thrilled. While I do think there's going to be fans that are disappointed, I think the Jets made not the right decision, but the smartest decision in this draft. I guess they're the same thing. But I think that it's basically, as I'm trying to struggle together with the English language right now, I would say the biggest thing is that the Jets made the smartest decision. It wasn't the sexiest. It's not the one that's going to sell jerseys. It's not the one that's going to sell publicity in the paper. It was just the smart football move. It wasn't the prettiest move. It wasn't the one that gives you the most excitement. But you know what? You feel a whole lot better about the offensive line tonight than you did 3 hours ago. That's going to do it for this episode of Rich Sports Talk. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.